What's up, everyone, and welcome to Playmakers. I'm Hayley Elwood. It is week 17, and the Los Angeles Chargers will welcome the Denver Broncos to town. So joining me to break down the Bolts opponent in this one is Broncos team reporter Sydney Jones. Sydney, how's it going?
Hey, Hayley, it's going good over here in Denver. Super excited to head to LA this weekend, see you and to see SoFi since I didn't get to see it last year, but hopefully it's a fun one.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, anytime these two teams meet, it always is very exciting, albeit crazy, but exciting. It's the AFC West chaos. And looking at the picture right now, the Chargers are 8-7, the Broncos are 7-8. They last met in week 12 where the Broncos beat the Bolts 28-13, both teams coming off losses. But when you look at this game right here, right now, what is the Broncos mindset heading into this one?
Yeah, Hayley. Well, similar to the Chargers, like you mentioned, the Broncos are, still in the playoff hunt. I mean, both those, two losses, like you mentioned, really decrease those chances, obviously, of making it into the postseason. But this team's really not giving up. I mean, the mindset that I've seen from the guys this week is that they're still going into this game as it's a playoff game. I mean, despite the odds, they're looking at these last two games as playoff games. I mean, Drew Lock said it himself that, this week that the number one goal here is just to win these final two games. And they're preparing like they're going to, like these last two games are playoff games, like I mentioned. And I say that a lot because that's what's been talked about a lot, not even the past 2 weeks, but the last 3 to 4 weeks, really, play the rest of the season out like it's going to be a playoff game. And that's really goes to show just how important these last two games are and goes to show how important these last two wins are for this team. I mean, the mindset's just to end this season, playoffs aside, with a winning record here. I mean, win out, finish 9-8 and avoid a fourth consecutive losing season.
I think when you look at the Chargers, it's that same mindset, that same look, we can control our own destiny to a point, which starts with winning these final two. You need a little help on the side. But that's why I think this game should be a good one. It's probably why the NFL stacks these games at the end of the year too. Keeps it interesting.
I just did a preview show that we do every week, and I give a score prediction, and my score prediction was that this game was going to go into overtime. I think it's going to be a fun one, a bold prediction, but both these teams really do want it.
Yeah, they absolutely do. So when you look at what the Broncos did, or I guess didn't necessarily do last week against the Raiders, the run game really struggled to get going. That was not something we saw in week 12 against the Chargers, but was that an anomaly, do you think, or do you think they can get that going again?
Yeah, Hayley, I do think they'll be able to get that going. I mean, I think that was really to credit the Raiders, defense. I mean, the D-line played really well on Sunday, and I think Vegas' run defense, they did struggle in the beginning of the year, but they've slowly but surely have been getting better, have been improving week after week, and in my opinion. And, I did talk to Javonte Williams after the game on Sunday. And, he said that every time him and Melvin, got the ball, there was somebody already in the backfield. I mean, they really just couldn't get it going because, the Raiders defense was just so on top of things. And I think really for this week, it comes down to, better blocking up front. Like head coach Vic Fangio, he emphasized that this week. I mean, it starts with the offensive line. It starts with the tight ends, the receivers. I mean, and luckily for us, we're getting center Lloyd Cushenberry back. He was on the COVID-19 reserve list last Sunday and play against the Raiders. So he'll certainly help. And I do think Melvin and Javonte, they're going to get back on track here. I mean, you guys know how good Melvin is. I mean, he leads this team in touchdowns with 7 so far this season. And Javonte Williams, I truly, Hayley, I can't say enough good things about Javonte. I mean, he's just such a physical back. I mean, he breaks tackles like no one I've ever seen. I mean, never goes down on first contact. And no offense to you guys, Hayley, but the Chargers run defense, they have struggled a lot this season. I think I read somewhere that, they're bottom 5, I think, in the league in terms of rushing yards per game. So I think if there's, any week for Melvin and Javonte to get back in their groove, this is the week for them.
But Javonte Williams, I mean, he is one of those guys. I think when you look in the division, you can circle certain guys on certain teams that you have to game plan for. And just as young as he is certainly one of those guys who you are going to be looking at for years to come with the impact that he has made for the Broncos for sure.
Absolutely. I've been amazed just week after week. I don't know if you watch, but Good Morning Football, they have that angry run segment. Yeah. I'm just waiting each week. I'm like, is Javonte going to get picked again? Because he's just that good. And like I mentioned, he just doesn't go down on first contact ever. I've never seen someone break tackles like he does.
So I've talked a bit about this week or the prior week 12 matchup, I guess I should say, but Attending pressers, kind of talking to guys, how much stock do they put into that game? Do they go back and look at it, getting ready for this game now?
I think they do, a good amount. I mean, this team knows that they can beat the Chargers, and they have the blueprint, on how to slow down Justin Herbert, in this Chargers offense. Just looking back at that last performance, Drew Lock did address it, this week in his press conference. And like you mentioned earlier, Drew went in to relieve Teddy a little bit in that, week 12 game. And I think Drew being able to play in that game is definitely going to be helpful for him, already having a feel for those guys, having already played them this season. And, they already know what worked well and what didn't work well against the Chargers in week 12. So yeah, I mean, you have a feel for who they are and, how to attack them the second time around.
This Broncos defense, they play these Chargers so hard, this Chargers offense so hard, and they gave that offense fits in that first game. We saw the impact that Patrick Surtain had in that game. But why else has this defense continued to hold opponents to such a low scoring average, as in the fact that they're still tied for the number one scoring defense right now in the league?
Right. I'm not going to lie, Hayley, that was such a fun game to watch for this defense, specifically
for your side.
Right. For my side. For Pat Surtain, I mean, 2 picks, one of those being a pick six, his first career pick six. I mean, he's another really fun rookie to watch this season, but just the defense as a whole. I mean, I just think this group matches really well together. I mean, not just the secondary alone, because they're an amazing group, but like you mentioned, number one scoring defense, this defense as a whole. I mean, you look at some of the younger guys like Pat. I mean, I think of Baron Browning, an inside linebacker, who stepped up huge this year due to injuries at that position. I mean, you got Jonathan Cooper, and then, you have all these rookies coming in and making an immediate impact, along with, a veteran group like Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson, Bradley Chubb. I mean, Shelby Harris on the line. I mean, this defense is just loaded with talent and is really hungry. I mean, I just think this group gels really well together, and they certainly feed off of each other's energy on the field. I mean, you can feel that when you're down on the field, you can feel it in the press box, but, I think another person to credit for this defense's success is obviously Vic Fangio here. I mean, he's just a defensive minded guru. I have no other way to say it. He's just a defensive minded guru and is really, really great.
Well, and this is another one of those games that's mentor versus mentee with Fangio and Brandon Staley and all of that. So there are always a lot of storylines too. But flipping to the Broncos offense, Drew Lock appears to be the starter heading into this one. As you said, back in week 12, we saw a little bit of him when he came in relief of Teddy. Then Teddy got back in there. But how, knowing that he's likely going to be the starter, does that maybe change this offense, if at all, going into this one?
Right. No, I don't think that this will affect the offense really. I think it'll be relatively the same game plan with Drew, since he started his first start of the season against the Raiders. I think they'll go along with the same game plan they did for him last week. I mean, let's talk about last week a little bit. I mean, he did a great job at protecting the football, had 0 turnovers, which I know is something Drew is very prideful of and, really focuses on week in and week out. And even head coach Vic Fangio, he praised Drew this week. I mean, he said he did a great job with the play action game and, made some big plays off of that, delivered the ball in places that it needed to be. I think Drew just needs to build off that from last weekend and keep the ball moving downfield to go score and, maybe get some more points on the board, because that is something that this team has struggled with offensively. And another thing I hope to see, this offense improve upon this week is just third down conversions. I mean, if you look at, the Raiders game, the Broncos were 1 for 10 on third down. And this team, I mean, you have to stay on the field on third down to win games. So, I mean, overall, like I mentioned earlier, if they can get the run game going, if they can fix, what they do wrong on third downs, I mean, I think this offense should be in a good spot.
And then lastly, Sydney, kind of to tag off that, every time I have someone previewing the opponent, I end on this note, which is what's maybe a factor or factors that you see that could play a role in how this game pans out?
Right. Well, I'm going to have 2, Hayley. To start, I think, like I just mentioned, kind of going off that last question, this offense needs to find a way to put more points on the board. In last week, only 13 points against the Raiders. Previous week, 10 points, against the Bengals. I mean, Denver's defense is putting this offense in great position, week after week, multiple times throughout the game, to find the end zone. And I mean, looking back at that Raiders game, this defense had a season high 3 takeaways. So this offense really should be capitalizing off of that. And I think another one, and this kind of goes with it, is just getting Jerry Jeudy more involved. I mean, I think that will have a huge effect this week. I mean, both, Vic Fangio and Drew talked about it this week. I mean, Vic anticipates Jerry having a good game, and, I hope to see him get a lot more targets. And Drew, I mean, I know Drew loves Jerry, but I mean, he just couldn't give him enough praise. He said he's one of the best route runners that he's ever seen. And quite frankly, one of the best route runners I've ever seen. But like Drew said, I think this offense needs to take advantage of how good Jerry is. And, getting Jerry the ball more will certainly have an impact on this game.
Well, it's a good old AFC West rivalry coming up here in week 17. Sydney, thank you so much for joining me. Looking forward to seeing you out at SoFi on Sunday. And we really appreciate you coming on Playmakers.
Of course, Hayley. Thank you so much for having me.